All right. Hello, guys. Welcome to my lesson on Mr. Is's What If. So, this is an exploration into science fiction writing. As you can see, I'm a huge sci fi fan, but even this is a little bit suspect. I'll tell you why later. Okay, so first things first, take out your writing books, and in your index and heading, I want you to write that in index. So essay number and then science fiction. Just check back from your previous ones. I think this would be essay 4, if I'm not mistaken. Could be essay 5, but please check. All right, so after that, go to your main page and write this in heading. First, writing, okay, then science fiction, and then your essay number, blah, blah, blah. Okay? So once we go for that, I want you guys to mind map these notes, or if you want, you can do list notes as well, your normal notes. I don't mind for this, okay? I just feel mind maps are an easier way for myself as a more visual learner to organize my thoughts. Okay, so why ask what if? All right. So science fiction takes readers to a new world that's an extension of our own. If you guys remember from my lesson when we started this chapter, okay, we are always asking what if, and we will use this as a platform to discuss the human condition, basically. So the key here is the reality of the science fiction universe would diverge in some key way from the real world as we know it. So what does that mean? So like we can see where it starts, our world, and then it kind of goes off in a different direction. Okay? So in other words, science fiction authors and science fiction short story writers, which are you guys right now, would ask the question, what if? Right, so there is several what ifs here. There is the main what if, and then there is the what if according to situation. Okay, let's move on. Hello. Okay, so there is Isaac Asimov's I, Robot. This one asks, what social and political situations might arise from the creation of semi-conscious robots? That means robots that can think, they have their own soul. Okay, Asimov is a very good, not good, creative science fiction author. Died now, of course. Next, we have Michael Crichton, who wrote Jurassic Park, the novel. He also wrote several other science fiction based novels. Now, he is considered a thriller writer, but he has elements of science fiction. Jurassic Park, he explains the DNA sequencing and stuff like that, to make the dinosaurs coming to life seem scientifically plausible. All right? So he asks, what are the dangers of bringing back dinosaurs into the world? What if we can get DNA from dinosaurs and make them? Okay? Next. The very first science fiction novel from the mother of science fiction, Mary Shelley, she asks in Frankenstein, what might happen if humanity found a way to create life? But in this case, it's to jumpstart a dead body. So she was considered the mother of science fiction because she, when she was writing this story, she actually remembered some conversations that her father and her and several well-known doctors and scientists of the day, um, regarding the creation of life, how life works, and stuff like that. In fact, it is because of that that she was able to conjure up such a rich world. Over there on the extreme right, you have Ray Bradbury's Martian Chronicles. He asks, what if we were able to settle Mars? What if we were able to live on Mars? Okay? So, when you write sci-fi, you have to ask this question, what if? So, for example, the first point here is a science fiction short story that one of your seniors wrote. Very, very good. I really like his train of thought there. So what if Malaysia was so polluted we need to buy oxygen at the 7-Eleven store? Yeah. Um, the other one, what if my car was alive and can turn into a robot? So of course this is Transformers way back in the day. What if my classmate was a robot? See, you get it? Okay. So there you go. We're always asking these questions when we write um, science fiction. Now, in your checkpoint, you will be given a prompt. So your what ifs become major what ifs, turn from major what ifs, I'm sorry, to micro what ifs. Okay? So, for example, last year's checkpoint, they had this question. Um, Imagine that an alien landed on Earth and needed your help. Okay, oh sorry, alien landed in your school and needed your help to get to know the Earth, something like that. So yeah, it's a very wide thing. So now we can narrow down the what ifs. So the alien landed in school. What if it was bad? What if it was good? Okay, what if okay, so what if it was good? We continue on. All right, what if it looked like a human being with blue skin? What do? Makeup. So you're always kind of solving these riddles in your planning stages, yeah. So you guys focus on the short story element, but if you guys want, you can also listen to me when we do the broader novel writing ones, because I don't know how many of you like writing enough to want to do it as a profession. If you have that talent, please go ahead, explore it. Okay, so now usually in class I would ask you to show me your what ifs, but we'll skip this. But this is like a really nice exercise for you guys in class. But for a flip lesson, nah. Okay, so yeah, and here I just took a screen grab from Marvel's What If. So if I were Yondu, I would have asked, "What if I ain't your father, but I sure am your daddy?" If you guys haven't seen Marvel's What If, those are a great series of shorts on Disney Hotstar. Okay, moving along. Story is key. So after you get your what if, I want you to build a story around it. With short stories, describe through action. I keep telling you this time and time again. Describe through action. So punch your reader in the face, make it well paced. And that rhymes. For example, in here from the novelization of Star Wars A New Hope, okay, it says here, Vader's remaining wingmen looked around in panic for the source of the attack. The same distortion fields that confused rebel instrumentation now did likewise to the two TIE fighters. Okay, so in here, he didn't exactly write, I think Alan Dean Foster didn't exactly write, Vader's remaining wingman feels panic. He shows it, looked around in panic. So the feeling, the adjective is used to describe what he was doing. Okay, and then he used the word confused as well. So that's also quite telling, because it can be a double use of the word confused. So instead of saying the same distortion fields that scrambled his radio or whatever, he used the word confused because it reflects the sensors being confused, and it also reflects the pilot being confused. Okay, so next we have world building. Okay, now world building is one of the most important parts of creating a compelling sci-fi story. You use your imagination to construct the world, but also you try to ground it in reality. Okay, there you go. So that's what separates science fiction from fantasy. I will give you guys a comparison chart later. So even the most fantastically imagined story is still a reflection of real world questions and problems. Remember, as writers, we are trying to connect to the reader, and the best way to connect through the reader is to feel with them. Okay? Now, for short stories, you have limited time and space to really flesh out a whole world. So use descriptive language to describe items or to lump a use with description, as we can see from the next page. Examples. All right, so in the movie and book Blade Runner, okay, um, this story is, as a short story, was called "Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep?" And yes, when it got turned into a film, it was called Blade Runner because it just sounds cooler. Okay, now in here it says nothing could be more impolite. To say is your sheep genuine would be a worse breach of manners than to inquire whether a citizen's teeth, hair, or internal organs would test out authentic. So in from this, and it's world building, but it's not talking about the world. It's not talking about like, ooh, big buildings. Yeah, it's actually just talking about how people would react if you asked, "Hey, is your sheep a real sheep?" Because everybody else has electric sheep or robot sheep, yeah, as pets. Um, and yeah, so for them to ask whether you own a living thing is even worse than to ask whether your face, your stomach or whatever is real, because at that point in Philip K. Dick's world that he built for Blade Runner, he kind of hand waves the fact that everybody has some sort of robot feature at some point. Okay, so now I'm using fantasy for this, but this also applies. Okay, um, in J.R.R. Tolkien's Lord of the Rings. As for the hobbits of the Shire, with whom these tales are concerned, in the days of their peace and prosperity they were a merry folk. They dressed in bright colours, being notably fond of yellow and green, but they seldom wore shoes, since their thick feet had tough leathery soles, and were clad in a thick curling hair, much like the hair of their heads, which was commonly brown. So, awesome. Next up, character is king. Okay, now world building is one part of it. Okay, next your characters must be fleshed out. Now within characters, if your story idea doesn't create interesting situations or conflicts with your characters, develop it to see how your characters would be impacted. Okay, so for example, in here, in Aldous Huxley's A Brave New World, okay, tall and rather thin but upright, the director advanced into the room. He had a long chin and big, rather prominent teeth, just covered when he was not talking by his full, floridly curved lips. Old, young, 30, 50, 55? It's hard to say. And anyhow, the question didn't arise. In this year of stability, AF632, it didn't occur for you to ask it. Alright? So nobody in here, there's world building plus a description of a character. Okay? The world building here is like, yeah, nobody asks how old you are anymore because, you didn't, yeah, it's normal. Yeah, everybody looks young because, medical science has expanded so much. Alright? So, just now I said something about Lord of the Rings. So what is the difference between science fiction and fantasy? Because both of them are fiction. It's speculative fiction. Both of them are based in your imagination. So what's the difference? Let's go. Sci-fi versus real fantasy. Okay, let's get some blue pill, red pill action going on here. Okay. Okay, so first things first, within sci-fi, okay? Now, sci-fi has a basis in science and technology. It is rooted in scientific principles and often explores futuristic technology, space travel, artificial intelligence, etc., etc., etc. Okay, whereas With fantasy, their basis is in magic and supernatural elements, relies on magical and supernatural elements that defy the law of science, involve spells, mythical creatures, and magical artifacts. Okay, like the One Ring to rule the world, or Avada Kedavra. There's no scientific explanation for that, but there you go. So next we have the comparison between plausibility and realism, and imagination and creativity. So with sci-fi, it's all about being plausible. It's about being connecting it to current science so that people can see, this might be possible in the future. And then with fantasy, we have the imagination and creativity. It allows for a greater degree of creative freedom and imagination because you can shape unique and fantastical worlds and creatures without having to think too much about your your laws of physics, for example, in terms of size. Which is why, actually, fun fact, Star Wars isn't actually a science fiction series. Star Wars is actually a space fantasy or a space opera, okay? Because you have these unexplainable elements like the Force, and a lot of things get hand waved because of the Force, okay? It is the will of the Force, okay? So, yeah, I'm actually more of a space opera fan rather than a sci fi fan, haha. Okay, next up, we have settings. Future for sci-fi, it's a lot of times it's future advanced or advanced settings, whereas in fantasy there's medieval or ancient settings. But again, with the march of time, with the march of creativity, a lot of things get muddled. There are now things like urban fantasy, where you have things like vampires. What was this? True Blood. True Blood. The movie series and book series of True Blood. Okay, that's an urban fantasy because it's got like vampires and werewolves. You know, so it's a little bit of urban horror, urban fantasy. There's magic in there as well. So yeah, a lot of worlds are colliding now, and it's a really great time to explore your creativity and see how you can write and change the future of writing and storytelling. So with sci-fi, most of the time it's future advanced, but there's also the dystopian sci-fi where it imagines the current times. They might even mention the year 2023, but they break off the timeline a little bit and make it a little bit more sci-fi. Next, we have technological focus for sci-fi and magic as a fundamental force in fantasy. All right, so yeah, again, with sci-fi, your focus is technology. You would describe the technology, what makes the spaceships fly. You'll use like specialized terms. All right, like for example, the restraining bolt, the relativity potenza, or the what do you call it? The hyperdrive engine, the warp drive engine. You know, so we use these very engineering centric terms or scientific centric terms to describe or focus your story on. Whereas in fantasy, most of the time it's, you know, this potion, that potion, this spell, that spell, the sword of, I don't know, Merlin, or you know, the chosen one, you know, like talking about prophecy again, which is why Star Wars is more like a fantasy. Okay, so next, sci-fi has the exploration of human potential and limitations, whereas fantasy, they have mythical creatures. Alien worlds and species for sci-fi, not all the time, but if you have sci-fi that goes out of the Earth, yes, extraterrestrial. Okay, and in fantasy, we have the epic quest and the hero's journey. Now, we've mentioned the hero's journey before, but if you guys want me to re-explain it, please ask me in class. Please comment in the conversation in Teams. Next, number 7, we have scientific explanations for sci-fi. Whereas in fantasy, you create entirely new worlds, okay, that don't have to make sense scientifically. All right, sci-fi number 8 focuses on future challenges. And fantasy, again, they lack scientific explanation. Okay, so how to plan a sci-fi story? First, you ask your what if, write down the skeleton, build your world with details, then flesh out your characters, then write. Okay, so steps 1 until 5 is something that you have to do. All right, especially in an exam setting. Plan properly. Okay, so for characters, maximum 2 well-planned characters, and then the rest of the characters could be a little bit arbitrary. Okay, so like let's say it's you and an alien and your friends showing him around school. You only have time to write realistically around about 250 words. If you're really good, you can write more. But yeah, uh, when you plan what your character is like, and then when you write your story, make sure they respond in a way that makes sense for how your character is planned as. Yeah, there you go. Now here's your assignment. Your assignment is your hero flies a spaceship through a difficult obstacle. So could be a space version of Top Gun with the enemies being the obstacle, or the hero or heroine is carrying something valuable in their ship and they're going through an asteroid field, or your main character has a problem while transporting sick people in their transport. So the main thing is hero flies a spaceship through a difficult obstacle. All right. Describe through action. Word limit is strictly 200 minimum with a maximum of 350. Any words over 200 words into the third page will be ignored. Okay, so if your writing is big, it's okay if you go into the third page, but if your handwriting is tiny and you still go into the third page, there is something wrong there. Okay? So, thank you very much. The end. I'm going to stop right here. Okay? So, remember we're writing this in class. Okay? In class. So, please plan your stories properly, and then when we come in, I'll have a short briefing. Right, and then we're gonna move on. Okay, thank you very much, guys. See you later.